Welcome to week 4 of Bible Studies for Life. We're continuing in the book of Daniel today, into chapter 6. And we've had another change in kings. Belshazzar died, and Darius the Mede. Remember the statement was made, it will go to the Mede, your kingdom will go to the Medes and the Persians. Well, Darius the Mede has now taken over reign of the kingdom. Daniel is in a position of leadership, and that's where we find ourselves in chapter 6. So before we dive into this passage, if you haven't already, be sure and subscribe. Hit the little subscribe button there, ring the bell, then you'll get a notification when the video comes in on Monday morning. Be sure and like. Appreciate it when you like. That helps us a lot. Comment. Got questions, ask those. We'll always answer those. And share with others. Appreciate it if you do that. And if you want to support the ministry that we have in teaching and in mission work, then you can go to give.exposedtochrist.com. A link is in the description below, and you can give to support our ministry. Appreciate all of those of you who have done that already. All right, let's look at Daniel chapter 6. We're picking up here. Daniel has been appointed a leader, and we know there are all these people always that are trying to get him out. They're trying to undermine his authority, and really in doing that undermine the king. Darius is the new king, so they come to the king and they say, the administrators and satraps went together to the king and said to him, may King Darius live forever. All the administrators of the kingdom, the prefects, satraps, advisors, and governors have agreed that the king should establish an ordinance and enforce an edict that for 30 days anyone who petitions any god or man except you, the king, will be thrown into the lion's den. Therefore, your majesty, establish the edict, sign the document, so that as a law of the Medes and Persians, it is irrevocable and cannot be changed. So the king Darius signed the written edict. Okay, they come to the king and they're kissing up, oh, live forever, we love you, you're the greatest king we've ever had, all of this. And then they start lying. Which is that old thing, how do you know they're lying? Because they open their mouth, right? Well, here you go. All the administrators. Is that true? Daniel was an administrator. It wasn't all. They didn't have any problem lying. So this was not a problem for them at all to lie. They were pursuing their own means, their own good, what they wanted to happen, their own goals. And so lying, if that's what you have to do to get it done, then you lie. So we've all agreed that the king should establish this ordinance. And I want you to notice this. You can't petition anyone, any god or man. Anyone who petitions any god or man except for the king. So they're setting it up because they know Daniel. They know what he does, right? And they say, therefore, establish this edict and sign it so that it is irrevocable and cannot be changed. It's interesting that even in their edict, you see their deceit, right? Not everybody's agreed on this. And you see their plan, we're going to get anybody that petitions, so they're going after Daniel. But then you see the true wickedness in them. They're going to be thrown into the lion's den. We're going to have them thrown in the lion's den. We want to see them suffer. We want them to have an horrific death. It's not just stand them up and cut their head off or whatever. It is throw them in the lion's den. So they are so wicked, right? And then this deal to make it irrevocable, because they know that when the King Darius figures out what's going on, he likes Daniel. He's going to try to get him out of it. We have to make it irrevocable. And you see the naivete and the hubris, the pride coming out in the king to say, I like it, I'll sign it. When Daniel learned that the document had been signed, he went into his house, and the windows in its upstairs room opened toward Jerusalem. And 3 times a day he got down on his knees, prayed, and gave thanks to his God, just as he had done before. And then these men went as a group and found Daniel petitioning and imploring his God. Now, I don't know that there's any Old Testament law that says you have to pray towards Jerusalem, but that's what he did. He was longing to go home. He's praying for his people, praying that his people will be able to return home. And he does it regularly, 3 times a day. They know it, right? They see it. This 3 times a day, just as he had done before, right? They knew what he would do. They knew that he was going to pray to his God. So, I mean, that was the whole setup, right? It's a whole setup. They were actually, it's so funny, isn't it? Their plot to defeat and destroy Daniel was based on the fact that they knew that Daniel was a man of integrity. So to get rid of the man of integrity, they used his integrity against him. They knew that even when he found out, after he learned about this document, that he would still do what he always does, because he is a man of integrity, and we can't have that. Isn't that interesting? You know, we like to think that, boy, you do everything you're supposed to do. You live the life the way you're supposed to. You honor God with your life. You do it right. And people may not like it, but they'll respect it. Sometimes, but not always. In fact, some people will use all of that to destroy you. And that's what they were doing with Daniel. They were using his uprightness, his righteousness, his integrity. They were using that against him because they knew he would do what he always did. He was not concerned about keeping them happy in a way that would dishonor his God. So they used it against him. So they approached the king and they asked about his edict. Didn't you sign an edict that for 30 days any person who petitions any god or man except you, the king, will be thrown into the lion's den? I love this. Didn't you do that? Seems like I remember. They're the ones that brought the edict to him already written out. They're the ones who went and staked out Daniel's home. And then they show up and they're like, it seems like I don't remember. Didn't you do that? And the king answered, it was the law of the Medes and Persians. The order stands as irrevocable. This is irrevocable. We have to do it. Then they replied to the king, Daniel, one of the Judean exiles, has ignored you, the king, and the edict you signed, for he prays 3 times a day. He does it. We know he's going to do it, and he has ignored you. What are we going to do, king? It's irrevocable. You have to follow through. And the king actually works to try to get Daniel out of this, but he has signed an irrevocable. Here's the thing about this, okay? He was being a man of integrity in the sense that he was going to keep written what he had written, and he was going to follow through on it no matter what those consequences were. And I think the Medes and the Persians knew that too, that leaders, they knew that, so they used that against him as well. But they knew that he was a prideful man, that like most people, he would respond to the buttering up, and that he wasn't a godly man. You know, he wouldn't see through it. He didn't have discernment, so they could get it done. But on the other side of it, I think, look, you're the king. You can just revoke it, can't you? You're the king. But he didn't use that, so he followed through. So the king gave the order, and they brought Daniel, and they threw him into the lion's den. The king said to Daniel, may your God, whom you continually serve, rescue you. You like this? The king knew about Daniel. He knew he continually served him. A stone was brought and placed over the mouth of the den, and the king sealed it with his own signet ring and with the signet rings of his nobles, so that nothing in regard to Daniel could be changed. And then he went and prayed. He fasted all night long. The king did, praying for Daniel's deliverance in the lion's den. Isn't that interesting? I really wish that verse would have been in there. You ought to include that verse in your teaching. Next morning, Daniel comes out, hadn't been touched, right? Then Daniel spoke with the king. May the king live forever. My God sent his angel and shut the lions' mouths, and they haven't harmed me. I was found innocent before him and also before you, your majesty. I have not done harm. I might have broken the law, the edict, but I haven't done any harm. And you know that, king. You know they tricked you. You know that they lured you into this. The king was overjoyed and gave orders to take Daniel out of the den. When Daniel was brought up from the den, he was found to be unharmed, for he trusted in his God. And then the king ordered that all the guys that got him to sign that, they be thrown into the lion's den. And the scripture says before they hit the ground, the lions were taking them down. It wasn't that the lions weren't hungry. It's that God closed their mouths so they didn't harm Daniel. They didn't even paw at him. This is an amazing story, right? It's a great story, famous story. We know this, Daniel in the lion's den. A lot of people know this, but Boy, teaching the story and looking in at the little things that happened and the attitudes and the way people acted and the deceitfulness, and then understanding this is what happens. This is how evil people act. This is how they live. And so we need to understand that and not pretend that it's not the case. Evil people do evil things. And so we must be people of integrity and honesty. We must follow through. We must trust God. And we must not fall into the trap of when a person comes in complimenting, hold them at arm's length, because you need to be careful. Why are they here? What do I know about them? What kind of character do they have? Be careful about that, because that's where Darius fell, right? I think it's really important that we kind of look at this story, and I would say it's important for you as you teach to read the whole chapter, see everything that happened, because it's a great story, great stuff in it. Hope that's helped. God bless you as you teach. Thank you for being a teacher, for showing up every week in a small group and leading them. God bless you for that. Be sure and subscribe, like, comment, share, ask your questions, all of that. We will see you next week.